morning and welcome to our Monday morning motivation on behalf of the Texas Association of African American Chambers. I am Courtney Johnson Rose and honored to serve as chair of the board for our esteemed association. And I want to welcome all of our chamber leaders from across the state. We are in interesting times, as you all are seeing. We're still dealing with a national pandemic, and now in Texas, we have specific issues with weather, but we are still Black chambers across the state. We're still working on behalf of Black businesses in our communities, and now more than ever, we are needed. But that work continues to get harder and harder. So just know how much we appreciate you all as our chamber leaders and are very focused at TAC at bringing critical and timely information through our Monday motivational series. Today, we are very honored to have Congressman Marc Veasey as our special guest for our first segment. And then for our second segment, we have Representative Reynolds that will be joining us also too. Congressman Veasey represents the Fourth Worth area, the 33rd Congressional District, but as you all know him as an advocate and a fighter on behalf of communities all across the state. So we are very honored, Congressman, to have you with us. Thank you for your time. Today we're going to talk about the American Rescue Plan, and to give us some introductory comments and to formally introduce the Congressman, I'm going to turn it over to our President and CEO, Mr. Charles O'Neill.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. As Madam Chair noted, we are going to start this conversation with Congressman Veasey. One thing that was really critical about his joining us today is that he also served in the Texas legislature. So he understands what we are battling against down in Austin in our efforts to improve opportunities for our members. And so, as you know, and I sent out information about some of the components that are contained in the American Rescue Plan, which is working its way through Congress now. Many of you were on the call with us at the U.S. Black Chamber with the Vice President and the Treasury Secretary a couple of weeks ago. Our concern is that despite the kind of veiled language that's included in the legislation as proposed, citing small business and minority business, we know that far too often it does not make it to Black business. And so we did ask the Vice President for some specific language around Black-owned businesses. Again, we understand the political difficulty that represents, but we want to make sure that in addition to the $15 billion, I think is proposed for grants to small business and $35 billion that's proposed for minority serving financial institutions, including CDFIs. There's a huge bunch of money, $350 billion included or proposed for direct support to local and state governments. What we want to achieve, Congressman, and if you'll kind of address how we might best achieve that, is to attach some kind of directives on the state's allocation. So whatever that portion of that 350 direct aid for the state of Texas, that there be some language on it that directs how that money will be deployed when it reaches our state. Again, because of your experience in the legislature, we know that federal disbursements far too often end up some places that we don't even recognize or places that we wouldn't even know existed. And so we want to make sure this time that as best we can, what we'll try to do is finish. After we hear from you, what you think we might be able to achieve on assisting you at the federal level, we'll talk to Representative Reynolds to see how we can craft some legislation on this end that, again, applies the same kind of directives to the federal money. So good morning, Congressman. Thank you so much for making time out for this morning, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And first of all, good to see everybody. I hope everyone is having a good morning and recuperating, safely after, the ordeal that we just went through with the failure of our electric grid. And I don't know how many of you heard me talking on the news, but it literally, we were just minutes, if not seconds away from the entire grid crashing, which if that had occurred, we would still be trying to figure out, even with this weather that we have right now, we would literally be trying to figure out how we were going to dig from up under this today. Like had the entire thing going down. Like we were really like that close. It's scary to think about. And so I hope that whenever we do investigations and look into this, we can figure out a way how to have some, better backup. There are obviously pros and cons to Texas having our own grid and having ERCOT. We've been able to put an enormous amount of renewable energy on our grid. About 23% of the energy that we generate from ERCOT is renewable. That's, incredible it's more than, it's a higher percentage than the EU. But not having some sort of a backup plan is scary. And, for particularly for, Black owned businesses, when you look at COVID-19, and then you look at these sort of, weather type setbacks that we have, both, nature made, nothing that has to do with it being, perpetuated from any sort of a system of being, both, spawned from nature. COVID-19, it could be really devastating for African American businesses. And so, we need to make sure that we get to the bottom of both of these. And as far as COVID-19 and the effects of that, as it relates to Black-owned businesses, I think that we're going to be looking at this for a long time to see, what sort of impact it has had on Black-owned businesses and Black-owned businesses' abilities to be able to access, funds like PPP. I think that there's good news and bad news. I think the good news is that, the Black business owners that reached out to me pretty much all called me to say that they were approved, that they got loans, right? But there was you're talking about just like literally just a handful of people. I did have one couple that I met at an event in Dallas a couple of years ago that said that they actually their biggest concern was just how difficult it was at accessing, because they weren't able to go through their bank, and they ended up having to go through another bank and got them, but that they just thought that it was like way too difficult to be able to access these funds. I talked to a woman in West Dallas that owns a vegan soul food place, where actually they're one of my Marc Means businesses, and she told me that she had a very good experience. But I think that for a lot of businesses, particularly small owned businesses that are sole proprietorships, that may have not had like the right sort of record keeping and what have you, being able to access these PPP funds were very difficult. And I think a lot of people like that didn't apply. I think a lot of people like that didn't apply. One of the things that if you talk to me or Eddie Bernice Johnson or Colin, or if you go down to Houston, you talk to Al Green or Sheila Jackson Lee, one of the things that we can do as members of Congress is that we have caseworkers that work in our office. And these caseworkers do everything from immigration issues that people in the district are having to loved ones that may have someone locked up in a federal prison and they need medical services at a federal prison, or they need to be moved from one facility to another, IRS issues that people are having. Like our caseworkers can work on anything that's federal related. And I was just asking different colleagues around the country, different Congressional Black Caucus colleagues around the country, about how much casework they were doing on people that were denied PPP loans or didn't get PPP loans. And it really wasn't, believe it or not, it wasn't a lot. It wasn't a huge number. And I think that is because there were a lot of people that were just, that felt discouraged, that felt like that they, weren't, that they didn't have the right records, or that they weren't going to be able to get through. We saw reports of at least two large banks that let people cut in line based on their relationship with bankers or how much money they did with banks, which was a huge mistake. I mean, I think that that's one area that we definitely should have put into law, was saying that that you could not cut in line, that it had to be first come, first serve, whoever called in first, and not what sort of relationships that people have. And look, I know that everyone on this call that's a small business owner, that you actually value those relationships that you have with your bankers. But again, you know, if you look at the people that were black-owned businesses that were having a hard time accessing the funds, they really weren't, you know, the Matt Houstons of the world that go to chamber events and is involved in downtown events, and people know, like, that's not who was having trouble accessing these funds. It was African American businesses, from people that really, the business is more like a job. You know, it's not necessarily even entrepreneurism in the way that we think of it. Like, it's, you're talking about people that literally their bank and their bank account is to be able to deposit checks and be able to make their payroll if they employ 1, 2, 3, 4 people, whatever it may happen to be, and make sure that the bills are paid. And it's just a cyclical game. It's literally, it's like, this is more or less their job than it is their small business. And how we make the system be able to help people like that, I think is really going to be the key. And, you know, one of the things that I've talked about when speaking to, you know, on any business related call, regardless if it's, you know, Black chamber, Hispanic chamber, or a downtown chamber, or any other business group. One of the things that I've stressed, because I was told this from a Dallas Fed chair, was that the least amount of small businesses that we have closed in this country, the faster it is that we're going to economically recover from the effects of COVID-19. And I think the same thing can be applied to in the Black-owned business world. The least amount of Black-owned businesses that fail, the more likely it is that the African American business community, African American communities at large, are going to suffer less, the more businesses that we can figure out how we can keep open. And so I think that us being able to have this conversation today to talk about, you know, some things that will make it easier, or you know, just you know, more likely that these businesses will stay open, like that really does need to be the, you know, our most important goal. Oh,
Hey, Charles,
uh,
you're on mute, Charles.
Go ahead, Congressman. Again, thank you so much for that overview. Again, our hope is that you can help us in our efforts to, one, best assist you in crafting legislation that supports our need. And our need in this case is to make sure that this big tranche of federal money that comes to the state won't get put someplace that Black businesses can't reach
and access it. Yeah.
No, and so we, as much as anything else, we need some guidance from you, or if there's something that is a statement we can issue, or I don't know, but ultimately what we want to do is make sure that the Texas legislature is responsive when the funds hit. And
Right.
So it would be helpful, I think, if when the allocation was made to the state, that some portion of that money was directed to support growth, development, expansion, or sustaining of Black-owned businesses.
Right, exactly. You know, I think that what would be good is if, you know, especially when you talk to your membership, to specifically sort of pinpoint in from them, you know, again, particularly people that historically have had trouble accessing these, you know, types of deals. Probably the people that aren't necessarily regulars at the meetings, right? Like the people that really do have trouble and may not have the office staff and the time to be able to, you know, be able to navigate systems like these, to really dive down and to find out what they're doing and identify areas, you know, for me, you know, that'll be helpful in being able to, you know, sort of work, with this before it gets to the point where we're looking back and trying to figure out, how we don't let it happen again. And I think that that's really the most important thing.
Okay.
I think
Well,
Darren had a question.
Darren with a
Yeah,
question.
go ahead, Darren.
Mark, Congressman, I think one of the issues last time was that each one of the banks kind of set their own rules and guidelines on what the application process required for as collateral as well as documentation. Could you federally mandate that so that there's some consistency from bank to bank? I think there was some confusion at the outset of the very first tranche of PPP.
Yeah, and it all wasn't. A lot of it was the government's fault. A lot of it really wasn't the bank's faults. They kept moving the guidelines. They kept changing the rules, and that was a huge problem. And we talked with Treasury about that, and I think that what ended up happening was that there was a turf war that was going on between Treasury and the Small Business Administration in DC over exactly how these rules were going to be administered and exactly what were the interpretation of those rules. And so it was Mnuchin, versus the SBA people and wanting to have a final say. And that was that was a big problem. It was a problem that I heard from business owners all over the state, particularly small business owners, regardless of what race they may happen to be or whether they were rural business, urban business. It was a big problem. And so we've tried to work that out as much as we possibly could. It'll be interesting this time around, to hear what people are saying that are applying, people that haven't applied, because I know there were a lot of people that just got discouraged, and I'm not sure how much money is left from the first round. I know that a few months ago there was actually still money left, but it would be interesting to see what sort of issues that people would say that they're having now for somebody that applied now, not someone that applied back in 2000, but mid 2020. And I think that any sort of answers that you can give me on what people are saying now when they apply, I think that will be good. You probably saw that one of the things that they're doing to try to make things easier too is that they're going to have oh God, like it was a day for like small businesses to be able to apply, to where if you only have like 5 employees or less, then you can apply separate from the rest of the country. And so I think that things like that will also be helpful as well. And I think that we need to get as many businesses to apply as possible too, because I really think that once we get post COVID-19, I think a lot of the loans are just going to end up being forgiven anyway. And I don't know that to be for sure, but that's just one of the things that's one of the rumors that have been floating around DC, is that that most of this money is going to end up being forgiven, because you almost have to do that in order to make sure that the economy doesn't continue to putter along once we are able to reach some level of quote unquote herd immunity.
Congressman, that leads me to the question that I had personally, which was, I've seen a lot of Black businesses that are established that didn't apply for PPP because they don't like debt. My father, for example, is in his late 60s and is in business, and he'll just suffer through it versus going to the bank to go out and get this loan. And it was so unclear, and it still is somewhat unclear on the forgiveness of the loan. So has any final decisions been made yet on loan forgiveness? Because that is a big hurdle in our community. Some are just very risk adverse from past negative experiences.
There were grants for people, the smaller dollar amounts. There were grants for people to be able to apply to, and then there were terms for some of that money to not be paid back, but you had to be able to submit your paperwork and show that that you had past receipts that justified the amount of money that was being given to your business. Um, again, I think for some of these businesses, we need to figure out some sort of a way how to obviously make sure that there's no fraud being committed, but at the same time make it easier, because we know that for a lot of these small businesses, it's just going to be very difficult for them to be able to go back and have that paperwork to be able to convert the loan into something that is, forgivable, like a lot of these other businesses, were able to do. And so I think that that's really going to be the big challenge. But we want people to, again, to be able, want people to apply. I think it's hugely important to apply, because the small businesses that do apply are going to be much stronger when we get past COVID-19 than people that didn't do it and struggled along, because it doesn't seem like a lot at the time, but all of the money that each and every one of us spend in the economy is important. And so if you have a small business, a small Black-owned business, that's like, you know what, I'm not going to, get donuts, every morning for the people that work in the office, donuts and coffee anymore. That's an expense that we have to cut out because of COVID-19. And if you start cutting little things here and there like that, um, then all of a sudden, it has a cumulative effect throughout the entire economy, because those are local dollars that aren't flowing into the community anymore. And if small businesses that don't apply are cutting back in other areas because they didn't get the assistance, and that's not good for their overall economy. That was one of the other things that the Fed, that the local Dallas Fed chair, wanted to, reinforce to me, that all of this money, whether it's PPP, whether it is unemployment insurance, whether it's stimulus checks, no matter what it is, it's money that is circulating through the economy at probably maybe the most desperate time, that we've had in generations in the U.S. economy. And keeping all of this money floating through the economy is just it's important. And as Texans, one area where we're probably better equipped to be able to deal with this than other parts of the country is that, I've also been told by economists that this is going to be the area that people are going to continue to move to. Like, people are going to continue to come to Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, Houston area, San Antonio area. Like, people are going to continue to come to our state. And so when this is all said and done, we're going to be hurt less than other parts of the country. You probably saw that Peloton opened up I think they were hired like 1,500 people up in Plano. I mean, so we know that this area is going to continue to grow. Again, our goal needs to be how do we continue to grow and make sure that we keep these Black-owned businesses up and running? Because as the people that are on this call that are small business owners know, just being able to get your business to the point after you open it up to where it's profitable, to where you feel comfortable enough going out to buy a house, where you feel comfortable enough going out to buy a car, you feel comfortable enough to use some of your discretionary income to be able to take your family on a vacation, or be able to, go out and eat a little bit more often. Like, all of those things, it takes time. You didn't open up your business, on day, 1, and on day 30, you don't go and buy a Mercedes. That's not how you became a successful business person. You did that in time. And if these businesses shut down and have to reopen and start that process again, especially Black-owned businesses, we're all going to suffer because of it.
Definitely so. Mr. President, we have a couple of questions in the chat. I'm not sure how we're doing on our time, but Victoria Stevenson had a question, and I wanted to allow her to address that. Mr. Moody.
Go.
Ms. Stevens.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, great. I've been having problems this morning with my audio. My name is Victoria Stevenson. I'm the CEO of Allied Supply Chain Support and Services. Thank you, Congressman Veasey, and to Charles O'Neill. We have a consulting firm, and we primarily target minority Black-owned businesses on how to successfully navigate government contracting. So that means that we need to help them build their business credit, personal credit, how to navigate the system so that they can scale their business. And so we had several Black-owned businesses that were literally in tears, very frustrated because there was no education awareness on how to apply for the PPP. Their concern now is, how am I still going to be able to keep my doors open? And so we have several workshops, but I think we need to target, like with Linda Gray with Greater Southwest Black Chamber, with the Dallas Black Chamber. I am part of the 10,000 Small Business Goldman Sachs, and they have a lot of communication that's going out there as support centers so that it addresses the questions that small businesses have. So the things that I was really concerned about is deployment, a system, communication. How do we effectively get our questions to you so that we ensure that these dollars are going to be disseminated down appropriately and, down to small businesses? How do we, to Black-owned businesses specifically? And then what support can we provide so that we can, is it town halls, communication, so that Black-owned businesses are not fearful or not educated or aware that they can go after the PPP loans, understanding the interest rates. I mean, this is all about growing your business and scaling your business. What assistance do you need from us? And then how are we going to effectively put a deployment plan together so that we are ensured that we are going to receive these dollars and that we can grow systemically, as Black-owned businesses?
Yeah, no, Victoria, great question. And I think that the big thing is that, I think that as an organization, that if you can, put something on paper and, have all your businesses signed, or whoever the board is signed to say that you represent this many businesses, and lay out some of those, key questions that you all collectively feel are the biggest problems. And I can take that letter to the chair of the Small Business Committee to try to make sure that some of those areas are addressed. That you're concerned about in any upcoming stimulus packages, or business assistance related packages that we work on. That is really the biggest thing. And again, some of those areas, like was mentioned earlier in the very beginning of the program. And what I think was so difficult about the very beginning of the program was that you were talking about a massive amount of money that was put together in a very short time period to address a situation that was unprecedented, and trying to figure out a way how to work it all out and how to prevent a lot of fraud and bad business stories. And some of it just, didn't, and there were ways, and anytime that amount of money is being spent, you're going to have to, even though I'm not saying that we should think that this is acceptable, but you're going to know that bad things are going to happen, right? Like there was a guy that bought like a Lambo or something, and then you had the stories about Ruth Chris Steakhouse and the Los Angeles Lakers, and and there was just some bad press, and just trying to work like all of those things out and roll out a massive government program where you have SBA and Treasury trying to communicate with each other, I think was very, very difficult. But like the issue that I addressed earlier, which was the guidelines and how the guidelines kept moving around. And it was making it difficult for businesses, because one day they were told, here's what you need to do. And then the next day they were told, well, no, that's not how it works. And that was all, the government's fault. Literally, that was SBA and Treasury trying to figure out how they were going to implement this massive program administratively in this short time period where people were very desperate. And so we went back and I took my complaint to the small business chair, which I was on small business at the time. We're in a new Congress now. I'm not on small business anymore, but I was on small business committee at the time. And I took those concerns, and other people took those concerns, because it was something that we were hearing all across the nation. And so, they've tried to address that the best they could. And so if it's still not good enough when we do this next round, let us know. Let us know for sure. And I think it's really important that we hear from as many small business owners that are applying for funds now, just to see like what are the differences. Because again, even people that I know that received it, like the small like own business that I talked about up in the McKinney Plano area in Collin County. I mean, they did get the money, but the concerns that this small business owner had, I mean, they were very legitimate concerns, and it was really all because of just it was not good the way that it was rolled out, but it almost had to be rolled out that way because people were so desperate, and we needed to infuse some money in the economy in a very, very quick way to avoid the economy slipping further into a recession.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Congressman Veasey, and I want to join on this discussion because I want to respect your time. I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing, not only locally, because you are representing part of Dallas too. I always like to represent.
Oh, yeah.
I always like to state that Congressman Veasey is Fort Worth and part of Dallas.
Yeah.
But also thank you for all the work that you're doing in DC. I want to ask a transitional question before we go into our next speaker, and that is how we as business owners, business advocates in Texas can actually exercise or execute things that you want to have done federally to the state of Texas through our representative. I know Reynolds, State Rep Ron Reynolds out of the Southwest Houston area is on. What can we do as citizens to put pressure on our government to ensure that our businesses are being served?
Yeah, you need to speak collectively as one voice as much as you possibly can, and that's what I was just trying to relay to Victoria. I mean, as an organization, if you can pinpoint areas where are going to be a problem, or where your businesses and Black-owned business that you're hearing about are experiencing issues, to let us put that on paper and let us know, so I can actually take a document to the small business chair or whatever chair it may happen to be, and say, here are the problems that have been addressed to me by these small businesses. Just like I was able to go directly to the chair to talk about the ever moving guidelines that they were having with PPP. So I think that whatever that you can display and put on paper to us collectively as a group, that gives me something to say. Here's what many businesses, Black-owned businesses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, are talking to me about at this time. So it's not just me saying something or me coming up with something, but me actually having something concrete to be able to give. And speaking of that, before we transition over to my good friend Ron, with the storm that we just had, Texas has been declared a disaster area by the federal government, and so that means that more monies are going to be available for FEMA. There's going to be more monies available to help out in certain areas where people were uninsured. And we also need to make sure that our communities are receiving, those monies properly too, as they flow into state and local governments. That's going to be very, very important, because you're going to find out that there are going to be a lot of Black-owned businesses, Black-owned nonprofits that, whose pipes bursted, and whose businesses have been affected by this, and being able to get those businesses reopened and be able to have access to contractors and monies and what have you to get regrounded is going to be very, very, very difficult. And so as we get money and guidelines on how that flows down, we need to make sure that that Black-owned businesses, Black-owned nonprofits, and people in the community in general, that we are being served. Because I think that once we have these storms and we look at the aftermath, we're going to see that our areas probably ended up for different reasons being hit the hardest.
Mm. Well, thank you, Congressman Veasey, for taking time out this Monday morning, for our Monday morning momentum today. We appreciate all the work that you're doing, and we are friends. So if you need us here in Texas, we're here to support everything you're doing federally and locally. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And
Great.
Congressman, real quickly, I'd like to say that on behalf of, as you know, there are 25 Black chambers of commerce operating in our state. And from this call, you will receive a letter addressing the concerns that we have, so that you can go to Small Business Committee on our behalf. There clearly are many other questions inside the chat that we will try to address in our letter to you. Our real concern is this big tranche of money that's going to come to our state that is unfettered, so to speak. And that's a real concern. We understand PPP has its own set of problems. Idle loans have their own sets of problems. The agencies governing them, SBA and whatever, and the banks themselves. But when those big $3, $4, $5 billion comes to the state of Texas, that's left to the discretion of the governor, the speaker, AG, we get lost in the sauce, so to speak. And so Representative Reynolds is on. He's going to help us try to manage how we might best address that. But we want your assistance in ensuring that when the money comes from Washington to Austin, that it has some hooks set in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it definitely needs to.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking time out. This will be the first of many calls. We will call on you. I want to assure you of that. So
yeah, please do. Absolutely. Please do.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. So now we will move forward. I'm sorry about that. We are going to move forward because we have to respect Congressman's time. But what we are doing, we saved all the questions because there's some great discussions, and as Charles stated, we're going to have this in a letter to the congressman. And I want us to see if we can have our state representative answer questions too, because honestly, our businesses need to figure out how we get these funds, and everyone's frustrated. And so we need to know on the national level. We also need to know on the state level. But I want to be able to move forward with our program. Thank you, Congressman Veasey.
Thank you, everyone.
Good deal.
Thank you, sir.
Good deal. Now we will have we'll have our chair, Courtney Johnson Rose, introduce our next speaker representing the Houston area. State Representative Ron Reynolds. Again, before our chair speaks, we do see your questions, and please write all of your questions and concerns on this chat so that we can compile it and we can include it in our communications with both national and state legal or state legislative bodies. Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Matt. And it is an honor to introduce my own personal state representative representing District 27 of Texas, has been a part of the legislature since 2011. A good friend and a wonderful friend of the Texas Association of African American Chambers, State Rep Ron Reynolds. Thank you so much. I see that you're moving. Are you in a stable place, sir?
I am.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a champion on behalf of the Black businesses of Texas. I'm gonna have you make some introductory comments and then turn it over to our president for our first question.
Well, I hope everyone can hear me well. I'm excited to be on with my former colleague, Congressman Veasey. He served in the House with me, and I know he's a fighter. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to work together and collaborate at the federal and state level, because basically those two have to be joined together. As you all are well aware, the money flows from the federal government when it comes from the CARES Act or whatever, the disaster recovery, the SBA. It flows from the feds to the state. And when it does, we as a state need to have more directives on how these funds are dispersed so that we don't continue to get left out. Einstein said it best. The definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. And I share your frustration. I heard from many of my constituents and business owners that are African American, and I'm not going to say minority because I'm specific, that African Americans have been left behind. African Americans have been left behind, and we helped amplify that voice when it came to the PPPs, and they did make some adjustments on the second round where they went to community banks first. They had the first opportunity to lend, and so that was some progress. I'm still it'd be interested to see how much improvement there was in terms of the disparities because that first round was horrible, and so I'm looking forward to seeing that. But let me say this: I'm committed to working directly with you all as the voice of the Black business community in the state. Working with you, Courtney, and Charles, and the whole leadership team, Matt, and everybody. But we got to be deliberate about it. And I think there needs to be more coordination between the state and the federal when it comes to the legislative leaders. So, as vice chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, I am committed to leading that effort and working directly with TAC. I think that this is a great opportunity. I know our executive director, Marc Hoskins, is working in the office. We're sharing space. And so the synergy between TAC and the TOBC has probably never been stronger than it is this session, right? This is a critical session. And I can tell you that the commitment is there. So what we need to do is take some best practices and work with our congressional delegation, Congressman Veasey, Congressman Al Green, who sits on financial services under the leadership of Chair of Maxine Waters. We need to work directly with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who's a senior member in Congress, and also Colin Alfred and Eddie Bernice Johnson. We have some great senior members at Eddie Bernice Johnson, Sheila Jackson Lee, and Al Green, along with, VC and Colin Alfred. So we need to use that strength and make sure that we get those resources to our Black businesses in Texas. And I think that's the missing link. We haven't historically worked together from state to federal, but the time is right for us to do it, and I'm willing to help foster that with TAC. But I think TAC is the centerpiece, and we need to forge a coalition between TAC and the Congressional Black Caucus members of the state and the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, and demand some wholesale changes and accountability and transparency when it comes to getting these resources to our Black businesses, who are the economic engines that drive our economy. And so that's what I'm committed to. And let's do it. I don't want to just have rhetoric. I want to have red meat where we can put pen to paper and say, hey, here, the next meeting we're going to have, with me and Chair Collier and Sheila Jackson Lee, Eddie Bernice. I want to move it forward. Let's put it on paper. Let's put the agenda together. Let's put our goals together. Let's move our speak to the side. We need. How can y'all help us do it? That's where I'm ready to do. I'm ready to collaborate and to get it done. So I can speak on behalf of the Legislative Black Caucus. We will do it. We just need to get some coordination, and we can have TAC take the lead on it. And then we can bring our federal partners, starting with Congressman Veasey, Al Green, and Congressman Alfred. So that's what I think we need to do. And I think we need to do that very quickly so that we can execute this. And then we will make it a priority once we have that with Governor Abbott, right? We have Governor Abbott. Then we have the speaker, and we say, Speaker, feeling this is what we want to see from the Legislative Black Caucus. We're doing it with George Floyd, and we can have more than one issue. We're doing it with the George Floyd Act. Okay, we've done it when it comes to COVID and making sure there's vaccines in African American communities and testing. So now we need to take that same effort and say we need it for our Black businesses, and that they're on life support. If not, they're going to shut down, and it's going to harm our economy. So that's what we need to do. And I hope that we can coordinate in short order to get that done. And I'll yield for any questions or comments. But I think that, in my opinion, we got the people in leadership. We need to use the power that we have. And then I know we can get Royce West and Boris Miles on board, because they will be at the table with us. But we all need to work together and not say, well, hey, that's a federal issue. Oh, that's a state issue. Oh, that's a local issue. We need to come together and say, these are Black business issues, and we need to collectively work together and show our collective strength. And I think that's how we'll get it done.
Well, thank you, Representative Reynolds. Good to see you this morning. Really appreciate it. We know that you're going to be a champion for us. I want to, again, remind all of those on the call that what you said is exactly the intent of this call, was to begin the coordination between our federal representatives and our state representatives. We spent some time talking about existing programs, idle loans and PPP loans, which have their own sets of problems, right? Own sets of issues. Very, very clearly necessary to address those and iron those kinks out. But what we're really attempting to do, Ron, is Representative Reynolds, is a sneak attack on these funds, this aid to state and local governments. And they will very likely be allocated without any directive to them. They will be bigger than any disbursements we have seen in terms of loans and or grants. And we don't want the state of Texas to get $3, $4, $5 billion in the state with the largest Black population, and Black businesses get no benefit from that disbursement of money. So we're looking to see how best to make sure that when this American Rescue Plan is finalized and they start sending money to Austin, that it just doesn't go into the black hole like federal funds normally do.
And Charles, to that point, we need to say that unequivocally, without any ambiguity. That needs to be very clear, and we need to say that decisively based upon past practices that we've been left out and not at the table, and we need to change that paradigm. Just like right now, I'll give you a perfect example. I sit on the Energy Resources Committee, and we're about to hold ERCOT and the Public Utilities Commission's feet to the fire. We need to do that same collective strategy when it comes to these federal funds and the lack of African Americans who have breathed. I think that's what we need to do. And if we do it, I think we can be effective. We're going to be more effective doing it collectively. That's what Congressman Veasey said. I agree with that. If we one thing and maybe TLBC doing something else, and maybe CBC did something else, or maybe they didn't. But if we do something collectively, imagine that they would have never seen that before. They were like, wow, they really together. So I think we can do that, and that we can get a bigger punch when we have, Congressman Al Green, who is a subcommittee chair under the financial services, say, hey, blah, blah, blah. Well, SBA is under that. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so we got Maxine Waters saying boom, boom, boom. We need this in Houston, right? We need this in Texas. Mm-hmm. So I think that if we do it strategically, we can get it done.
All right.
But so I'm ready to do it. Y'all let me know what the game plan is. I'm ready to implement it in short order. Before it comes out. So we can't wait. If we wait till it's already rolled out, we already too late.
Exactly.
I think this is something we do in anticipation of it. We know it's coming, so we need to go ahead and get in front of it because once it's dispersed, we already too late at that point, right? They already done cut it up, and we in the back of it. We get crumbs. So I rather for us to come up with the game plan now before it's implemented and finalized. The ink is signed. Biden has signed it. We know Biden's coming to Texas. There's a lot of emphasis on Texas. I think we can get Mayor Sylvester Turner and Mayor Eric Johnson and to be on board with it. But I'm again, I can already tell you TLBC is ready to hold some feet to the fire and to make this happen. So let us know how it needs to look. We can do a joint letter, and they're gonna see, that we're serious when you have major players saying this is what we want to see this time around. And before the money comes, Abbott knows that the feds are looking at it, right? That's what we want to see. Abbott needs to see that the federal government is looking at the disparities that have existed from African Americans' lack of participation in the past. That's what I want Abbott to know going into this next round. And the great thing about it, Texas has a hub program. So we got programs, but we know that those programs and everything the state has isn't being implemented fairly. So you guys tell me what you think is the play. I'm gonna defer to you all's expertise. I just know that needs to be the game plan, and I'm willing to work with you to get Al and Sheila and everybody to the table. It sounds like Congressman Veasey's ready to roll with us.
All right, that is exactly what we'll do, Rep. That we will, as you stated, we work very closely with Marc. I'll be in the office tomorrow and I'll see him. But we will present what we believe to be the best benefit for the widest number of not only businesses but chamber organizations struggle as well. You know that, and so there have been a couple of questions raised about access to support for C6 organizations as well. So as most of the chambers are. So we'll try to put as comprehensive boilerplate up so that TLBC can see what it is that we're asking for. We absolutely understand that this session is going to be really strained for a whole lot of other reasons besides the ice storm. It was already going to be crazy. We understand that without regular access to the building itself, physical access to the building, it makes it difficult to interact with legislators. You might help us with some of that background too, Rep. And one of the things that we understand, and maybe you can clear that up for us, is that there's this kind of silent understanding that they won't take up any new funding bills, stuff that's out of the education, transportation, blah, 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 the stuff that they always do. So budget considerations will only be on those items, but there will be no new money items added to this year's budget.
That is my understanding. The Appropriations is having its first meeting today, the House Appropriations. It is my understanding that they won't take up anything that has a fiscal note. But the state has a very healthy over 10 billion with a B in its rainy day fund. The state has funds. It's all about priorities, and they find money for what they want to use it for. Okay, they're very good about that, right?
Right.
And so we have Representative Tony Rose, Representative Jarvis Johnson, and Representative Carl Sherman. All three of those members are on the Appropriations Committee. And Royce West, I believe, is the only African American on the Senate Finance. So we have 4 African Americans that serve on those committees, and we need to basically, have some conversations with them about, what some of our priorities are, because that can help shape it. And so Representative Rose has more of a leadership role on appropriations. She's vice chair of one of the subcommittees, and so I believe we can get her to help us navigate through that. And we just need to be strategic, right? We know that there's limited resources, but we need to make sure, just like I've already said, hey, our HBCUs, Texas Southern, Prairie View, we're going to make sure that we look out for them. We need to be creative in how we look out in the budget, and when they're writing those riders and everything, to make sure that we have support for some of our special interests. So that's what we need to identify, and then once we identify that, let's get with Representative Rose, and let's be creative. See, if we strategic, I think there's some ways that we can play, and I think that we can get Representative Rose. We used to be in a better position, for example, when Sylvester Turner was the vice chair of appropriations. But now, we got to be strategic and utilize what we have. And we can certainly talk to, Representative Rose about, some things that we may be able to do even within this lean budget.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Madam Chair, do you see a question for Rep?
Yes, Darren had a question in the chat, and that was to please recommend some language we can collectively use, local, statewide, that leverages Representative Reynolds and Representative Veasey's federal approach. So I think his question was around language that can be used. Coretta Graham had a question also too. I'm going to turn it to Coretta for her to ask her question if she's available.
Yes, good morning. My question dealt with the governor's office does these seminars about explaining the funds available on the state level. And I was just curious as how we can put pressure on, since you mentioned a Texas hub program, to have them do a seminar specifically for Black businesses. I know they probably won't, they probably do minority businesses, but normally when they say minority businesses, is normally not really focused on Black businesses. So I was just curious as to how we can, really push them to.
I think Coretta, it is good to see you, my old NAACP friend. We go way, way back. I believe that we can get that, Charles. So I can work with you if we can get something scheduled. I believe that we can get something scheduled I can say, hey, the TLBC would like to have something, blah blah blah, and it's directly with you guys. So yeah, we can do that. I believe we can accomplish that. So we just need to communicate, Coretta, what exactly we want. And then we can work with Charles through the TLBC and make that request. And I'm pretty sure we can get it done. It may be because of the circumstance, we may have to get it through Zoom, but I bet you we can get it done. If Zoom is acceptable with you guys, I can go on the record and say, I'm pretty sure we got the pull to get that done.
Yeah. No, we'll absolutely do that. We have been in touch, have been in conversation, and maintain a strong communication link with the governor's office of small business. They have not been the most responsive, as you know, to the very, very unique challenges that Black-owned businesses face. That's a constant fight. All of our conversations with Governor Abbott have been very pointed and very direct about the very specific failure of the state to support Black-owned businesses. That's an ongoing challenge, and so any assistance that we can get in firming up our demands, and we are certain that we got that support from you. We really appreciate that.
Sir. Yeah,
what we want to make sure. Go ahead.
No, just let me know. You guys, I'm gonna say it very crystally clear. You give me the marching orders, and to the extent that we can, we'll help execute it. Marc is, I already told him, and whatever we can do to help strengthen TAC this session, we're gonna do it. we're one. So let's do it. I don't want to, the biggest thing, let me just say this before I had to get off. The biggest thing is sometimes we say, well, we ain't done this and we ain't been able to do that in the past, or, I don't want to necessarily use that as as an excuse. I want to give us an opportunity to try to make it happen. Even now, other than the TLBC, there's new leadership. We're going to be more aggressive and more united. And so even we're working with the NAACP. So I see some synergy that I haven't seen before. So let's come up. You guys come up, show me, give me your agenda, and let's try to execute it. I know we're dealing with the pandemic, but there's more reason to strengthen. There's more reason for us to say, look, Governor, look, Speaker, we're dealing with COVID. And all of us have been impacted. But guess what? African Americans have been impacted the worst. And here's the numbers to show it. Yeah, we just came out with this, winter storm Uri, and all Texans have been hit hard. But guess what? African Americans have been hit doubly hard. So we can go with them and say, we can have a compelling reason why we need to do X, Y, Z. And so you guys come up with that, Charles, between you and Courtney, and you guys get that to us, and I'm going to work my ass off to help us implement it. So that's my commitment to you guys, and I'll work with my federal partners as well, and hopefully we get the same commitment, from them as well.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. And Madam Chair, before I hand off to you to wrap us up, I'll do my job security commercial on behalf of TAC. And for those folk on the call, understand that the reason that local Black chambers felt the need for an organization like TAC to represent your interests. You can see very clearly that we're working very, very hard on behalf of all Black chambers in our state, all Black businesses in our state, assembling both national and statewide leaders on behalf of the organizations that we represent. And so I want you to always rest assured that TAC is not in competition with local Black chambers. TAC is the operating arm or the advocacy arm that works when you necessarily can't pay attention because you got issues that are important to you on a local level. But we are in Austin actively working on behalf of every one of the operating Black chambers in our state and the members that they represent. And so thank you for your attendance this morning. Madam Chair, you want to take us on in?
Yes, sir. Thank you again. And I want to thank all of the chambers represented here. Thank you for your efforts. Also want to thank you, Mr. President, for the vision for this Monday morning motivation, and our two legislators that joined us, Representative Reynolds and Congressman Veasey. We have our marching orders. So as we continue with the Monday morning motivations, our next one will be in 2 weeks from today. So please set your calendars for March 8th. And our goal will be to have this letter formulated and to be able to continue on with the action steps identified. So please know that we wish everyone safety. We wish everyone success. We know that these are interesting and trying times, but we appreciate your participation in this forum. Please know that we are capturing. I've just taken different screenshots, etc., of the chat. So please, if you have any final thoughts, please place them there. But we want to be a good steward of everybody's time, and we will formally dismiss the actual session now. But thank you again. Hopefully everyone's safe, and we will see everyone again on March the 8th, 10:30, and you will see information coming to your email about the Zoom. Thank you again.